this reform is not just on rationalizing rates. It's also on structural reforms. It's also on ease of living. Rate rationalization, of course. We've reduced the slabs. There shall be only 2 slabs. And we are addressing also the issues of compensation cess. Ease of living, simplifying registration, return filing and refunds. Levied on common man's daily use items have gone through a rigorous looking into. And in most cases, the rates have come down drastically.
Hello, welcome to this special broadcast. I'm Parikshit Luthra. The Union government and states have undertaken a massive overhaul of the country's goods and services tax regime in a bid to boost consumption ahead of the festive season. Prime Minister Modi had heralded the dawn of next-gen GST reforms from the ramparts of the Red Fort during his Independence Day speech. So here's what happened. The GST Council, India's apex decision-making body on GST, has decided to scrap the 12% and the 28% tax slabs. The Council's rationale remains that this rationalization exercise of moving to a 2-slab structure will make compliance easier and boost consumption. There is a tax slab for 40% GST as well, but it would be limited to sin and super luxury goods. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who is the chair of the GST Council, said that the call to cut rates was a unanimous one and that there was no disagreement among states. Nearly 99% goods which were previously in the 12% slab have been now shifted to the 5% slab. The new rates will apply from the 22nd of September. Now, this is the important date. It is the start of Navratri. These products include daily essentials like toothpaste, toilet soaps, footwear below 2,500 rupees, fertilizers, tractors, electric vehicles, finished textile products. Now, let's focus on the 18% GST slab. Around 90% products that were earlier in the 28% have been moved to 18% slab. This includes cement, small cars, television, bikes with engine capacity below 350cc, air conditioners, refrigerators, among others. Individual health and life insurance premium, which were earlier in the 18% slab, have now been exempt from GST. But industry fears costs will rise without benefits under the inverted duty structure. And input tax credit, the centre is bracing for a revenue impact of close to 48,000 crore due to this overhaul. To take this discussion forward, I'm now joined by a panel of current and past FICCI executives. Anand Goenka, Vice Chairman, RPG Group; Nainalal Kidwai, Chairperson, Rothschild and Company India, and the India Sanitation Coalition. Also on the program with us is Manish Sharma, Chairman of Panasonic Life Solutions, India and South Asia. Thank you very much for joining us. Ms. Kidwai, let me begin by asking you, overall, how does this improve sentiments, unleash the best festive spirit, and also will this lead to a greater private capex cycle in the coming months and years as well?
Parikshit, thank you for having us on the show. I can only say that the mood has been celebratory, as you have heard from last night, and with due cause, because what it suggests is consumption goes up. And to your question on capex, if consumption goes up, capacities of industry get filled, and therefore capex goes up. So the big boost that comes to consumption and demand will drive the capex cycle, will drive demand, will in fact hopefully also drive sentiment, whether across markets or in individual pockets. I think beyond just what it does to the demand and capex cycle is the simplification that comes with this. Less confusion, less appeals, and even if there are appeals, the declaration of an appellate tribunal to ease whatever discrepancies still remain. But I do think that this is a huge move to what is primarily a 2-tiered structure, barring the 40% sin goods, and the simplification across the board, or an attempt at that, is definitely cause for celebration. So yes, bodes very well for festival spirits going forward.
Right. Anand, if I were to ask you, what kind of an uptick are you expecting in terms of demand? You know, especially when it comes to the entry-level buyers, the sentiment had been rather muted for the past many months. Are you now bracing for an uptick in the festive season and a sustained uptick in the wedding season as well?
Absolutely. I think the timing could not have been better. We have the end of the month and end of quarter coming in after the 22nd of September. Anyways, about 50% of sale happens in the last week of the month. So to that extent, we will see a big uptick towards the end of September. Then you have Diwali and you have the marriage season. So with all of that combined, I do think quarter three should be far better. Putting in 10% in the hands of the customer is a huge amount when you're looking at many duties coming down from 28% to 18%. So to that extent, with that much money or price reduction happening, it will make a big difference in demand going forward.
Right. But looking at the current economic situation and high US tariffs as well, will companies be ready to pass on the benefit immediately?
No, absolutely. I think it is our duty to pass on the benefit. We will pass on the benefit to the consumer. The government has clearly mandated that this is for the customer. So as soon as possible, the benefits will be passed on. There is some inventory that may be with trade, so there could be some delays in terms of a few weeks, but at least from the company side, we will be passing on the entire amount. There are certain areas such as sachet prices for FMCG products, which are priced at 1 rupee, say for the last 15, 20 years. What will happen to those areas? I think they're talking about volume increase, which they've done in the past where GST rates have got changed. So I think those are some sticky areas where pricing is very sensitive from a consumer mindset perspective. But otherwise, the intent is to pass on everything on day one.
Right. And Manish, if I were to come to you, when I look at the list of electronic items, I think a majority of them now come in the 18% bracket. How will this lead to a drop in prices? How and where all can customers expect price cuts in the weeks to come? And what is the average percentage of price reduction you're looking at?
I think the average percentage of price reduction will be about 7 to 7.5%, which will be the cascading impact logically of the 10% reduction which has happened. And I'm looking at this as a unlock, which was much due. And if you carefully look at all the consumer durables, I believe barring 32 inches and below, almost all were falling in 28% bracket. And the argument always was such that how do you look at unleashing this huge potential? Air conditioners, for instance, still continue to be about 7.5% penetration ratio in the country. So in my opinion, this is going to unlock that potential. And second, this whole process is not only going to be like products being more affordable for people. I think a lot of people will look at upgrading their whole lifestyle. In the situation where 32 inches and below were falling into 18% and the higher screen sizes were 28%. So that is getting bridged. So people would rather upgrade themselves to higher screen sizes and better energy efficient air conditioners for their purchasing decisions. So from my point of view, I think this is going to be a significant milestone when we will look back after a few years to unlock and unleash this whole potential, which always was ahead of us.
Manish, when it comes to consumer goods, what was the segment of the population which you felt was not coming to showrooms to make these purchases or big ticket purchases, those who were holding back and which you now hope to tap?
It's very clear. If you look at last 10 or 15 years and look at the spread month-wise, which happens on an annual level, while the sale is starting to become more flatter, there used to be a time people used to wait for their bonuses to get dispersed, and therefore Diwali used to be like very peak of the annual sale. With the advent of e-commerce and more reasons for people to make their purchasing decisions, the sales is becoming more flatter during the year. And there used to be people, there's a very large segment of consumers who would be like fence sitters, if I can use that term, during a summer season. And if at all the weather patterns are such that they can postpone their purchasing decisions to the next summer, I think those are some of the consumers who I believe would look at pulling their purchasing decisions up. So as I said, I think at the level of penetration where the country stands for majority of these products, this will be a huge unlock. And this is going to have a cascading impact on the supply side also. If you look at electronics, I mean, into televisions, into air conditioners, there are electronic controllers. And with rising economies of scale for all these products, country will be in a better position to like backward integrate at a faster speed. So I think this is going to have cascading impacts in the time to come.
All right, a cascading impact in the times to come. And Ms. Kidwai, if I were to ask you about how does this improve the investor sentiment when it comes to India? Now, reducing GST, reducing the number of rates, simplifying GST, making it a good and simple tax, that had been the demand of the industry for the past 8 years. This has now finally happened. The eventual ask is maybe have one nation, one rate. But how will this improve sentiments in the near and medium term?
Anything that improves or there's an expectation that it will improve the bottom line of companies improves investor sentiment. And I think what we're hearing here is that demand goes up. So you see top lines increasing. There's cost inputs, which look well contained for other reasons, including the lower inflation. And except for the shocks that might come from the tariff regime, domestic industries that are not impacted by exports are certainly going to gain. And if the bottom line improves, so does investor sentiment. I think there's a second angle here, which is interesting, which is the GST impact on infrastructure. The green sectors, all of these benefit from a lowering of GST on cement, on construction materials, on input costs in very critical sectors for the country. So to that extent, even input costs for projects, affordability, housing projects, real estate, which inevitably also drives growth, also impacts investor sentiment positively.
Right. The other question that I'd like to ask you, though the government has made it clear that this exercise of GST reduction was not linked to US tariffs in any way, but does this offset the impact to some extent, Ms. Kidwai?
I believe it does in terms of sentiment. Unfortunately, it may not impact sector for sector completely, because we know that some sectors, textiles, diamonds, leather, those that were largely export oriented out of the country to the US, and we do have other markets other than the US, fortunately, but those folks are clearly still struggling to understand how to cope with the impact of tariffs. They will benefit from the GST reduction because for many of their goods in terms of domestic GST rates, it has come down. So maybe some level of relief will come to them to the extent that the domestic market buoyancy makes up for the loss of export. But it's going to really be a case of wait and see whether the full impact can be made up to them. The timing in terms of announcements, I think these two things were moving in parallel. But if it pushed our government to make this announcement early, then it's very laudable because it does negate what was the negative effect of tariffs offshore. And it shows that our government is serious about looking across the economy and ensuring that buoyancy that we've been seeing comes back and comes back full force.
All right. Anant, if I can come back to you. Now, when it comes to seeking clarifications, there is a concern among, say, automotive dealers for that matter, that what happens to the compensation cess that they have already been billed for. You know, while they're buying inventory from car companies, they have paid the GST, they have paid the compensation cess. Now, customers are not going to buy those vehicles or may not come to buy those vehicles at least till the 22nd, till the GST changes are implemented. And they could lose out on that compensation cess, and that could be to the tune of 2,500 crores. So there is concern what happens to that. Would there be any clarifications that you are seeking from the government right now?
Yeah, it's too early to say specifically on that, but I think we will work with the dealer body, and if there is a need to make a plea to the government, certainly we will do so to get some clarification on that matter. But just a point at a bigger picture level, what is really exciting is that we think that this is a very critical point in India's reform journey. I think it is a very big step that has been taken, and there are various other steps that have been announced, such as the 1 lakh crore innovation fund or the national manufacturing mission. So where the investor confidence or business confidence comes in is that now a lot of what was announced is coming into action, and there is a higher sense of urgency that we are seeing to take quick action and big action. And therefore, in my view, this is just the start of large reform that can come in for businesses.
Right. Manish, to ask you, when you spoke about supply side improvements, do you expect consumer goods companies like yours to start investing more in capacity, in market expansion as well? Because you will have many more buyers now coming into the system and penetration of consumer goods also increasing.
Yeah, Parikshit, the answer is yes. If you look at the decade gone by, I mean, when it comes to Panasonic, we have invested into at least 5 greenfield factories, air conditioners being one, refrigerators, washing machines, and 2 wiring devices. And so is the case with our industry peers as well. And again, from a policy standpoint, if you look at last 10 years, I believe that a structured approach has happened. Initially came policies like MSIPs, which were providing capex-oriented subsidies, and subsequently came incentives to do component manufacturing like specs, and then finally came PLI. And we have to look at this from a bigger or a distance which defines such that this is a holistic action plan in place, both on the supply side and the demand side. And if you look at last 5 years, for example, again, I'll take the example of air conditioners. The weighted impact of PLI in air conditioners was about 5% to 4.5%, which led to significant value creation happen in the country from a level of 20% domestic value addition in 2021. Today, we stand at 65% domestic value addition happening in air conditioners industry. And then when you couple that potential 4.5% impact on air conditioners cost coming in through such incentives, with another 7.5% odd going as a price benefit to consumers, I think both coupled together will lead to a very good output.
All right, Manish Ahuja, Nayanlal Kidwai and Anand Goenka, thank you very much for joining us on the program. It was a pleasure speaking to you about the GST reform and how this will boost sentiment and also the investor view on India. We're taking a short break. On the other side, we will be joined by FADA President CS Vigneshwar and TVS Motor Company's two-wheeler business president Govt to discuss the impact of GST rate cuts on the auto sector. Stay tuned.